The elegant box arrives on my doorstep with my parents' return address marked for Derek's birthday. Inside lies a stunning vintage Rolex that makes my blood run cold. I recognize this watch instantly. It belonged to my late grandfather, the one my parents claimed was lost after his funeral 3 years ago. They're gifting stolen family heirloom to my husband. But why? My hands tremble as Derek reaches for it. "Don't touch it," I whisper urgently. "Please. It's a trap." "Juliana, what are you talking about?" Derek asks, his hand frozen halfway to the burgundy velvet box, sitting on our kitchen counter. The afternoon sunlight streaming through our window catches the gold face of the timepiece, making it gleam like it's mocking me. I can barely breathe. That watch has haunted my dreams for 3 years. That's Grandpa Henry's Rolex Submariner, the one that disappeared right after his funeral. Derek's eyebrows furrow with confusion. "Your parents said it was a birthday gift they picked out specially for me. They wanted to welcome me into the family properly." A bitter laugh escapes my throat. "Welcome you into the family?" "Derek, my parents have barely spoken to you since our wedding 2 years ago. They've never bought you so much as a birthday card, let alone a watch that's probably worth more than our car." The memories flood back with crystal clarity. I was 25 when Grandpa Henry passed away from pneumonia. Had been the only family member who truly understood me, who encouraged my dreams of becoming a graphic designer instead of the lawyer my parents wanted. The day after his funeral, when we gathered to divide his belongings, that watch had vanished from his bedroom dresser. Mom swore up and down that Grandpa must have hidden it somewhere or given it away before he died. I continue, pacing around our small kitchen. Dad spent hours searching through every drawer, every closet, every possible hiding spot. They even hired a private investigator to track down whether Head sold it or given it to someone else. Derek leans against the counter, studying my face carefully. He knows that look I get when something doesn't add up. After 4 years together, he's learned to trust my instincts about my family's behavior patterns. "The investigator never found anything," I explain, my voice growing stronger with each word. "No record of sale, no insurance claims, nothing. It was like that watch just evaporated into thin air." I move closer to examine the timepiece without touching it. The serial number on the case back is partially visible through the crystal display window. Something feels wrong about those scratches along the metal band. Grandpa Henry took meticulous care of his possessions. He would never have allowed his prized watch to accumulate those particular scuff marks. "Derek, I need you to trust me on this. Something is very wrong here." I grab my laptop from the living room and set it up on the kitchen table. Grandpa Henry bought this watch in 1978 when he got his promotion to regional manager at the insurance company. He showed me the original paperwork when I was 16. The serial number was engraved inside his wedding ring, too. My fingers fly across the keyboard as I search for information about vintage Rolex Submariners from that era. Derek watches quietly, recognizing my research mode from countless projects where I've needed to verify details for clients. "Here," I say, turning the laptop screen toward him. "Look at this auction listing from 2 months ago. 1978 Rolex Submariner, excellent condition. Serial number matches manufacturing records." Derek's face goes pale as he reads the listing details. The description matches the watch in our kitchen perfectly, down to the tiny scratch on the 11 o'clock marker that Grandpa Henry got from accidentally hitting his wrist against a doorframe in 1992. The winning bid was $50,000. I whisper, feeling sick to my stomach. "Paid by a collector named James Hartford from Chicago." But look at the seller information. The seller is listed as Estate Liquidation Services, LLC, with an address in Springfield, Illinois, the same city where my parents live, the same city where Grandpa Henry's estate was supposedly settled 3 years ago. Derek runs his hand through his brown hair, a gesture he makes when he's processing complex information. "So either your grandfather's watch somehow ended up being sold by a legitimate estate company, or my parents have been lying to me for 3 years about what happened to it." The words taste like ash in my mouth. "And now they're giving it to you as a birthday present. But why? Why would they steal from Grandpa Henry's estate and then gift the stolen property to you?" I refresh the page and notice something that makes my heart skip several beats. The auction listing shows that the watch was sold, payment was received, but then there's a note added just last week. "Item never shipped to buyer." investigating possible fraud. If you have information about this listing, please contact Auction House Security. Derek, whoever bought this watch never received it. Someone took the $50,000 and kept the watch. And now my parents are trying to give it to you. We stare at each other across our small kitchen, the weight of realization settling between us like a heavy blanket. The watch sits in its velvet box, no longer looking like a generous gift but rather like evidence of something much darker. What do we do? Derek asks quietly. Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with a text message from my mother. Did Derek receive his special surprise? We can't wait to hear what he thinks. Make sure he wears it to Sunday dinner this week. We want to see how handsome he looks in it. My hands are shaking as I show Derek the message. They want you to wear it. They want evidence that you have it. I need to call the buyer, I announce, grabbing my phone before Derek can object. James Hartford from Chicago. If he paid $50,000 for this watch and never received it, he deserves to know what happened. Derek catches my wrist gently. Juliana, are you sure about this? Once we make that call, there's no going back. If your parents are really involved in something illegal, then I need to know the truth. I pull up the auction house's contact information and find James Hartford's buyer profile. Most auction sites allow communication between buyers and sellers for legitimate inquiries. 20 minutes later, I'm on the phone with a man whose voice shakes with anger and frustration. Miss Chen. James Hartford says, I've been trying to track down that watch for 8 weeks. I paid the full amount immediately after winning the auction. The seller confirmed receipt of payment and promised shipping within 3 business days. That was the last communication I received. What did the auction house tell you when you reported the problem? I ask, putting the call on speaker so Derek can hear. They investigated and discovered that Estate Liquidation Services LLC is a legitimate business, but the person who listed my watch wasn't authorized to sell it. The real company never had any 1978 Rolex Submariner in their inventory. Someone used their business name and created fake credentials to list items they didn't own. My stomach drops. So the seller was using a fraudulent identity. Exactly. The auction house refunded my money and filed a police report, but the investigation hasn't turned up any leads. The business address led to a mail forwarding service, and the bank account used to receive payment was closed immediately after the transaction. Derek and I exchange glances. This is much more sophisticated than simple theft. Someone planned this carefully, using professional techniques to cover their tracks. Mr. Hartford, I think I might have information that could help your case. But I need to ask you something first. Do you remember any details about how the watch was originally described in the listing? Absolutely. The listing claimed it came from an estate sale in Springfield, Illinois. The original owner had recently passed away, and the family was liquidating valuable items. There were photos showing the watch next to some kind of death certificate and estate paperwork to prove its authenticity. I feel like I'm going to be sick. Mr. Hartford, what was the name on that death certificate? Let me check my saved screenshots. I can hear him typing on his computer. Here it is. Henry Morrison, deceased 3 years ago. Why? Because Henry Morrison was my grandfather, and that watch is sitting on my kitchen counter right now. My parents just gave it to my husband as a birthday present. The silence on the other end of the line stretches for nearly 30 seconds. Miss Chen, are you telling me that your parents stole your grandfather's watch, sold it to me for $50,000, kept both the money and the watch, and then gave it to your husband? That's exactly what I'm telling you. After ending the call with James Hartford's promise to contact his detective and share our information, I immediately call my brother Nathan in San Francisco. Nathan moved across the country 5 years ago to work in tech, partially because he needed distance from our parents' constant interference in his life. Juliana, I was wondering when you'd finally figure it out. Nathan says without any preamble when I explain the situation. What do you mean, finally figure it out? I've been suspicious about Mom and Dad's sudden financial improvements for months. Remember how they used to complain constantly about retirement funds and medical bills? Suddenly they're driving a brand new Lexus and they bought that vacation house in Branson. I'd noticed the changes but assumed they'd been wise with their investments. Nathan, what exactly have you seen? Items from Grandpa Henry's house keep appearing and disappearing. I visited for Christmas last year and saw his antique desk in their guest room. When I asked about it, Mom said they were storing it temporarily for a family friend. But when I went back for Easter, it was gone. Same thing happened with his coin collection, his vintage camera equipment, and those oil paintings from his living room. My heart is pounding. Did you ask them about it? I tried, but you know how they are. Mom got all defensive and started crying about how I was being suspicious and ungrateful. Dad accused me of trying to cause family drama, so I backed off, but I started paying closer attention. Nathan pauses, and I can hear him moving around his apartment. Juliana, there's something else. Last month, Mom mentioned they'd received a substantial inheritance from some distant relative on Dad's side. She said it was enough to pay off their mortgage and buy some nice things. But I know Dad's family tree pretty well, and I couldn't think of any relatives who would have left them that kind of money. Did you investigate? I tried looking up death records and estate filings, but I couldn't find any evidence of this supposed inheritance. No probate records, no obituaries, nothing. It's like this generous relative never existed. Derek has been listening to our conversation with growing alarm. He writes a note and slides it across the table. Ask him about other family belongings. Nathan, have you noticed anything missing from your own belongings when you visit home? Funny you should ask. That autographed baseball from when we were kids, the one Mickey Mantle signed at the stadium, it disappeared from my old bedroom. Mom said they'd put it somewhere safe, but she could never remember where. And those silver coins Dad gave me for my high school graduation have vanished too. The picture is becoming clearer and more disturbing. Our parents aren't just stealing from Grandpa Henry's estate. They're systematically taking valuable items from their own children and selling them. Nathan, I think Mom and Dad have been running some kind of fraud operation. They're stealing valuable items and selling them online using fake business credentials. The watch they gave Derek was sold to a collector for $50,000 2 months ago, but they kept both the money and the watch. That explains how they afforded the new house and car. Nathan says grimly. Juliana, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but Derek and I are going to figure out how deep this goes before we decide our next move. After hanging up with Nathan, Derek and I sit in our kitchen staring at the watch that started this whole investigation. What began as confusion about an unexpected gift has revealed a complex pattern of theft and fraud that could send my parents to prison. There's something else we need to consider, Derek says quietly. Why did they give me this specific watch? If they're running a sophisticated fraud operation, why would they risk exposing themselves by giving stolen merchandise to a family member? I've been wondering the same thing, unless they wanted you to have it for a reason. Maybe they're planning something else. Derek nods slowly. What if this isn't a gift? What if it's a setup? We need to see what else they're hiding. I tell Derek the next morning over coffee. I still have a key to Grandpa Henry's old house. Mom and Dad bought it from the estate and turned it into a rental property, but I know the current tenants are traveling in Europe for the month. Derek looks uncertain. Juliana, if we're caught searching their property, then well, say I was checking on the house for them like I've done before. They've asked me to handle maintenance issues when tenants are away. The drive to Springfield takes us 45 minutes through familiar Illinois countryside. Grandpa Henry's house sits on 3 acres outside town, a modest ranch-style home with a large basement that he used for woodworking projects. Using my key to enter through the back door, I immediately notice changes. The main floor looks normal enough, perhaps a bit emptier than when tenants were present. But when we descend into the basement, my blood runs cold. The space that once held Grandpa Henry's workshop tools and lumber storage has been transformed into something resembling a warehouse. Dozens of antique items are arranged on shelving units and folding tables. I recognize several pieces immediately. That's Mrs. Peterson's china cabinet, I whisper, pointing to an ornate wooden piece in the corner. She lived next door to Grandpa Henry. I remember her mentioning at the funeral that she was downsizing and selling her antiques. Derek examines a collection of vintage cameras lined up on one of the tables. These look expensive. Professional quality equipment from the 1960s and 70s. I move through the basement systematically, documenting everything with my phone's camera. Oil paintings, jewelry, silverware, vintage books, antique furniture, collectible toys, and military memorabilia fill every available space. The organization suggests this isn't random accumulation. Someone has cataloged these items carefully. Derek, look at this. I've discovered a file cabinet tucked behind a stack of boxes. The top drawer is unlocked and contains manila folders arranged alphabetically by seller name. Each folder contains printed emails, auction listings, photographs, and handwritten notes. The scope of the operation takes my breath away. My parents have been attending estate sales, garage sales, and antique auctions throughout central Illinois for the past 2 years. They're not just stealing. I realize as I flip through the documentation, they're running a systematic acquisition and resale business. Look at these notes, Derek reads over my shoulder. Widow, deceased husband collected military items, unaware of actual value, negotiated down from asking price. He looks at me with horror. They're targeting grieving families and elderly people who don't understand what their belongings are worth. Another folder shows a pattern of using fake business names to establish credibility with sellers. Estate Liquidation Services, LLC, Heritage Antique Buyers, and Midwest Collectibles Company all trace back to the same post office box and prepaid phone number. But the most disturbing discovery comes when I find a folder labeled with Derek's name. Inside are photocopies of his driver's license, social security card, and employment information. Notes written in my mother's handwriting detail Derek's work schedule, his hobbies, and even his clothing sizes. At the bottom of the file are draft letters to various law enforcement agencies. Derek, they're planning to frame you. My voice sounds hollow in the concrete basement. Look at this letter. It's a concerned citizen tip claiming that you've been selling stolen antiques online under fake business names. The letter describes Derek as having access to estate sale information through his work in property management. It claims he's been using his knowledge of recently deceased homeowners to target their families for fraudulent purchases. They've created a complete false identity for you as the mastermind behind this operation. I continue reading. According to this, you recruited my mother to help with sales because of her friendly demeanor, and my father to provide transportation and storage. Derek's face has gone completely white. They're going to claim they're innocent victims who were manipulated by their daughter's husband. How long have they been planning this? I check the dates on various documents. The earliest notes about you are from 6 months ago, right after we announced that I was getting a promotion at the design firm. Look at this notation. J's income increase makes D comfortable target. Won't suspect financial motivation. We discover additional evidence that my parents have been laying groundwork for months. They've made several small purchases from Derek, using fake names to create a paper trail, suggesting an ongoing business relationship. They've also documented every gift they've ever given us, including receipts and photographs, to establish a pattern of Derek receiving valuable items from them. The watch was the final piece. I realize, once you accept it and wear it to Sunday dinner, they have witnesses who can testify that you regularly receive expensive items from unknown sources. Then they make their anonymous tip to police, provide evidence of your supposed criminal enterprise, and position themselves as shocked family members who were unwittingly helping a dangerous criminal. Derek sits heavily on an overturned crate. Your parents have been planning to destroy our marriage and send me to prison so they can maintain control over your life. The cruelty of the scheme hits me like a physical blow. My parents haven't just been stealing from strangers. They've been systematically planning to eliminate my husband and force me back into financial and emotional dependence on them. We need to get out of here, Derek says, standing up quickly. If they come back and find us. I'm still photographing evidence when I hear car doors slamming in the driveway above us. Juliana, someone's here. Through the small basement window, I can see my father's new Lexus parked behind our car, blocking our exit route. We're trapped. Quick, the storage room, I whisper, grabbing Derek's arm and pulling him toward a small space behind the furnace where Grandpa Henry used to keep seasonal decorations. We squeeze inside just as footsteps echo across the floor above us. My mother's voice carries clearly through the heating vents. Robert, I told you we should have called first. What if the tenants came back early? The tenants are in Italy for 3 more weeks, Margaret. I checked their social media this morning. Besides, we need to move these items before the weekend. That antique dealer in Chicago is expecting delivery on Monday. They're coming down the basement stairs. Derek and I press ourselves against the back wall of the storage space, barely breathing. I still think we're moving too fast with the Derek situation. Mom says, her voice is different when she thinks no one is listening. Colder, more calculating. Juliana has always been perceptive. What if she suspects something? She won't suspect anything if Derek is wearing that watch at Sunday dinner like we planned. Once we have photographs of him with the stolen merchandise, we make the call to police. Simple. I can hear them moving boxes and shuffling papers just a few feet away from our hiding spot. Robert, what if this backfires? What if they don't believe our story about Derek manipulating us? My father's laugh sends chills down my spine. Margaret, we've been documenting everything for months. Phone records showing Derek called us multiple times to arrange purchases. Financial records showing cash payments from his account to ours. Witnesses who can testify that he's been receiving valuable gifts from us regularly. And if Juliana tries to defend him, then she's obviously been manipulated too. Poor girl, blinded by love for a criminal husband. Well, position ourselves as the concerned parents trying to save their daughter from a dangerous man. The court will probably award us custody of any grandchildren they have. Derek's hand finds mine in the darkness. His fingers are ice cold. Besides, Dad continues, once Derek is in prison and Juliana is financially devastated by legal bills, she'll have to move back home with us. We'll have our daughter back, plus access to all her design clients and business contacts. It's a perfect solution. They've planned everything. Not just Derek's destruction, but my complete return to their control. I realize now that my parents never accepted my independence. They've been waiting for an opportunity to eliminate my husband and force me back into childhood dependence. What about Nathan? Mom asks. Nathan is 3,000 miles away and barely speaks to us anyway. He won't interfere, especially once he realizes that defending Derek means losing his inheritance. Speaking of inheritance, did you transfer the Hartford payment to the offshore account? Yesterday. $50,000 safely tucked away in the Cayman Islands, just like the Peterson estate money and the Williams coin collection sale. Derek and I exchange glances. They're discussing multiple fraud cases, involving hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from grieving families. Margaret, help me load the military items into the car. That collector in street. Louis is paying cash, and I want to drive down there tonight. What about the China cabinet? The buyer in Kansas City confirmed pickup for tomorrow. We'll handle that in the morning. Right now, I want to focus on clearing out the highest value pieces before anyone starts asking questions about estate sales in the area. They spend the next 20 minutes loading boxes and furniture pieces into their vehicle. Every item represents someone's cherished family heirloom, sold under false pretenses and turned into profit for my parents' increasingly expensive lifestyle. After their car pulls away, Derek and I emerge from our hiding space, shaken and furious. Did you record any of that conversation? Derek asks. I check my phone, most of it, but I don't know if it's admissible evidence since we were trespassing on their property. We need legal advice before we go any further. This is beyond simple theft, Juliana. They're running a multi-state fraud operation, and they're planning to frame me for federal crimes. Back home, we spend the evening researching criminal defense attorneys and federal fraud investigators. The scale of my parents' operation requires professional law enforcement intervention, but we need to protect Derek from their planned frame job. There's something else we need to consider, Derek says as we review our options. If we expose them now, before they make their move against me, we might be able to save other potential victims. He's right. My parents' pattern suggests they're targeting vulnerable people throughout the region. Every day we delay means more families losing irreplaceable heirlooms to sophisticated manipulation. I call James Hartford and arrange a conference call with the detective handling his case. Detective Sarah Rodriguez from the Illinois State Police Financial Crimes Unit agrees to meet with us the following morning. Mr. Hartford's case has been frustrating because we haven't been able to identify the perpetrators. Detective Rodriguez explains during our phone conversation. If you have information that could help us build a case, we're very interested in hearing it. Detective, what we have isn't just information about Mr. Hartford's watch. We have evidence of a systematic fraud operation targeting estate sales throughout central Illinois. But there's a complication. The people running the operation are my parents, and they're planning to frame my husband for their crimes. That's a serious allegation, Miss Chen. Are you prepared to provide testimony and evidence against your own parents? I look at Derek, thinking about everything they've stolen from grieving families, everything they've planned to take from us, and their calculated cruelty in preparing to destroy our marriage. Yes, Detective. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to stop them. Then let's meet tomorrow morning and discuss how we can build a case that protects your husband while bringing your parents to justice. As Derek and I prepare for bed, my phone buzzes with another text from my mother. Don't forget about Sunday dinner. We're so excited to see Derek wearing his birthday present. Dad is planning to take lots of pictures for our family album. They have no idea that their perfectly planned scheme is about to collapse around them. Sunday morning arrives gray and drizzly, matching my somber mood as Derek and I prepare for what may be the last family dinner I ever attend with my parents. Detective Rodriguez has equipped us with recording devices and coordinated with federal postal inspectors who have jurisdiction over the mail fraud charges. Remember, the goal is to get them talking about their operation while we have witnesses present. Detective Rodriguez had instructed us during yesterday's briefing. Let them incriminate themselves naturally. Don't push too hard or they might become suspicious. Derek wears the fake Rolex replica that Detective Rodriguez's team procured overnight. The real watch is secured in evidence lockup, waiting to be reunited with James Hartford after the investigation concludes. The drive to my parents' house feels surreal. The familiar tree-lined streets of my childhood neighborhood look different now, tainted by knowledge of what my parents have become. You okay? Derek asks, reaching over to squeeze my hand as we turn into their driveway. I keep thinking about all the Sunday dinners we've had here over the years. All those conversations about family values and doing the right thing. How long have they been lying about everything? Mom greets us at the door with her usual enthusiastic hug, but I notice how her eyes immediately focus on Derek's wrist. Oh my goodness, Derek. That watch looks absolutely perfect on you. Doesn't he look handsome, Robert? Dad emerges from the kitchen wearing an apron that reads "World's Best Grandpa," despite having no grandchildren yet. Let me see that timepiece, son. I want to make sure the band fits properly. Derek extends his arm obediently. It fits perfectly, Mr. Morrison. Thank you both so much for such a generous gift. I can't imagine how much this must have cost. Oh, don't worry about the cost, Mom says, ushering us toward the dining room. Family is worth any expense. Besides, we believe in investing in quality pieces that will last for generations. The irony of her words makes my stomach turn. She's talking about generational value while discussing stolen property that she's using to frame my husband. During dinner, the conversation follows predictable patterns until Dad steers it toward more dangerous territory. Derek, I've been thinking about your work in property management. You must hear about estate sales and family liquidations fairly regularly. Derek nods carefully. Occasionally, when elderly property owners pass away, their families sometimes need help coordinating sales of household items before listing the real estate. That must give you access to some interesting antiques and collectibles. Dad continues. I imagine families don't always understand the true value of what they're selling. Sometimes, Derek agrees, but I always encourage them to get professional appraisals for anything that looks valuable. I'd hate for someone to sell a family heirloom for less than it's worth. Mom jumps into the conversation. Oh, but Derek, surely you've picked up a few nice pieces for yourself over the years. That's one of the perks of your job, isn't it? I can see where this is heading. They're trying to establish Derek's supposed pattern of acquiring valuable items through his work. Actually, I've always made it a policy to avoid buying anything from clients, Derek says. It creates conflicts of interest, and it wouldn't feel ethical to profit from someone's grief. Dad's smile becomes slightly strained. That's very noble of you, son. But surely there have been exceptions? Items that were going to be thrown away or donated to charity anyway? No, sir. Never. Mom tries a different approach. Derek, honey, you know we've given you several nice gifts over the past few months. That vintage camera from my father's collection, those silver coins Robert inherited from his uncle, that lovely antique desk lamp. We just want to make sure you're enjoying them. Derek and I exchange glances. She's creating a fictional history of gifts that never happened, establishing a pattern that will support their fraud allegations. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Mom and Dad exchange a quick look before Dad answers. We found it at an estate sale a few months ago. The family didn't realize what they had, so we were able to negotiate a very reasonable price. Which estate sale? I ask innocently. I love browsing estate sales. Maybe I know the family. Another pause. Oh, it was somewhere outside Springfield, Mom says vaguely. I don't remember the exact details. That's interesting. I continue. Because I could have sworn I recognized that watch from somewhere. It looks exactly like one my grandfather used to own. The silence stretches uncomfortably long. Dad's face has developed a slight flush, and Mom is fidgeting with her napkin. Juliana, dear, I think you're mistaken, Mom says finally. Your grandfather's watch was lost years ago, remember? We searched everywhere for it after the funeral. Right, I remember. But this one looks so similar. Same model, same year, even the same little scratch on the 11 o'clock marker. Dad clears his throat loudly. Coincidences happen, sweetheart. These vintage watches all look alike after a while. I decide to push harder. Actually, I've been doing some research on vintage Rolexes lately. Did you know that each watch has a unique serial number that can be traced back to its original owner? Mom's fork clatters against her plate. Why would you be researching that? Oh, just curiosity. I found this fascinating website that tracks stolen watches and helps reunite them with their rightful owners. They have a database of serial numbers from insurance claims and police reports. Dad stands up abruptly. I think we should move to the living room for dessert. Margaret made her famous apple pie. But Mom remains seated, staring at Derek's wrist with an expression I've never seen before. Derek, I need to ask you something important. That watch we gave you, have you shown it to anyone else? Taken any photographs of it? Posted anything about it online? Why would that matter? Derek asks. Because, Dad says, returning to his chair with resignation in his voice, we need to know how much damage control we're going to need. The mask is finally slipping. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing my parents' true faces. Damage control for what? I ask. Mom laughs bitterly. Oh, Juliana, you always were too smart for your own good, just like your grandfather. Always asking questions, always digging deeper when everyone else would leave well enough alone. What are you talking about, Mom? She's talking about the fact that we've been running a very successful business for the past 2 years, Dad says, his voice gaining confidence. A business that has allowed us to finally live the comfortable retirement we deserve after working our entire lives. What kind of business? Asset recovery and redistribution, Mom says, as if she's discussing selling insurance. We help elderly people and grieving families liquidate valuable items they don't appreciate or understand. Then we connect those items with collectors who will properly value and preserve them. Derek stares at them incredulously. You're talking about fraud. We're talking about providing services that benefit everyone involved, Dad corrects. The families get fair payments for items they were planning to donate or throw away anyway. The collectors get authentic pieces for their collections. We get reasonable compensation for our time and expertise. And Derek gets framed for your crimes. I add quietly. The words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. Mom and Dad look at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Framed is such an ugly word, sweetheart, Mom says finally. We prefer to think of it as redirecting responsibility to someone who won't face serious consequences. Won't face serious consequences. Derek's voice rises. You're talking about sending me to federal prison. Dad waves dismissively. You're young and healthy, with no criminal record. First-time white-collar offenders rarely serve serious time, especially when they cooperate with authorities and express genuine remorse. Besides, Mom adds, it would only be temporary. Once you've served your sentence, you and Juliana can start fresh. We'll be here to help her rebuild, of course. Families need to stick together during difficult times. I feel like I'm watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. These people who raised me, who taught me about right and wrong, are calmly discussing their plan to destroy my husband's life so they can control mine. You've been planning this for months, I whisper. We've been planning your rescue for months, Mom corrects. Juliana, Derek is not the man you think he is, has been taking advantage of your trusting nature, manipulating you into supporting his increasingly expensive lifestyle. What expensive lifestyle? We live in a one-bedroom apartment and drive a 10-year-old Honda. For now, Dad says ominously. But we've been watching, sweetheart. We've seen how he looks at expensive things, how he encourages your career ambitions so you'll earn more money for him to spend. Men like Derek start small, but their demands always escalate. The delusion is breathtaking. They've created an entire fictional narrative about Derek's character to justify their plan to frame him. "We're doing this because we love you," Mom says, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Derek has been manipulating you since the day you met him. We've been gathering evidence of his criminal behavior so we can prove to you what kind of man he really is." Derek stands up slowly. "I think we should leave now." "Oh, I don't think so," Dad says, pulling out his phone. "You see, we've already made some calls. The authorities are very interested in hearing about your little side business, Derek. They'll be here any minute to discuss your recent activities." Through the front window, I can see police cars pulling into the driveway. But instead of the small-town officers my parents were expecting, Detective Rodriguez and her federal task force team are approaching the front door. The trap my parents set is about to spring on them instead. The doorbell rings just as Dad finishes his speech about Derek's supposed criminal activities. Mom moves toward the front door with confidence, clearly expecting to greet local police officers who will arrest my husband based on their fabricated evidence. Instead, she opens the door to find Detective Rodriguez and 3 federal agents displaying FBI credentials. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Detective Rodriguez with the Illinois State Police Financial Crimes Unit. We're here regarding an ongoing federal investigation into mail fraud and elder abuse. We have warrants to search these premises and arrest the individuals responsible for operating fraudulent estate liquidation services." The color drains from Mom's face. "I think there's been some mistake. We called about our son-in-law's criminal activities." "No mistake, ma'am. Please step away from the door." As the agents enter our dining room, Dad's bravado evaporates instantly. He looks around frantically, as if searching for an escape route that doesn't exist. "Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest for federal mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse," Detective Rodriguez announces, producing handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." "This is impossible," Dad sputters. "We're the ones who reported the crime. Derek is the criminal. We have evidence." Detective Rodriguez continues reading his rights while Agent Thompson restrains Mom, who has begun screaming about wrongful arrests and family conspiracies. "We recorded your entire conversation this evening," I tell them quietly. "Every word about your business, your plans to frame Derek, and your scheme to control my life." Mom stops struggling and stares at me with pure hatred. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything we've done for you, after all the sacrifices we've made, this is how you repay us, by choosing my husband over criminals who happen to be my parents?" "Yes, this is exactly how I repay betrayal." Agent Martinez begins photographing the dining room and the gifts my parents claimed to have given Derek. These photos will document that the defendant Derek Chen was not in possession of any stolen property at the time of arrest. Dad makes one final attempt at manipulation. "Juliana, you don't understand what you're doing. Without us, you'll have nothing. No family, no support system, no one to help you when Derek shows his true colors." "I understand exactly what I'm doing, Dad. I'm choosing truth over lies, love over control, and justice over family loyalty." As the agents escort my parents toward their waiting vehicles, Mom turns back with a final vicious comment. "You'll regret this decision for the rest of your life, Juliana. When Derek leaves you for someone younger and prettier, don't come crawling back to us for forgiveness." "I won't need to," I reply. "Because unlike you, Derek actually loves me enough to want me to be happy and independent." After my parents are driven away in separate police cars, Detective Rodriguez stays behind to explain the next steps in the investigation. "The search warrant for their primary residence and the rental property will be executed simultaneously," she informs us. "Based on what you've provided and what we recorded tonight, we expect to recover evidence linking them to dozens of fraudulent transactions throughout the region." Derek asks, "What happens to the victims who were defrauded?" "Well, work with federal prosecutors to secure restitution as part of any plea agreement. Your parents accumulated substantial assets through their criminal activities. Most victims should recover significant portions of their losses." Over the following weeks, the scope of my parents' operation becomes clear. FBI accountants trace more than $300,000 in fraudulent sales through their various fake business entities. They targeted grieving families at funerals, elderly individuals at assisted living facilities, and overwhelmed heirs managing estate sales. The scheme was sophisticated enough to avoid detection for over 2 years. They used different fake identities for different regions, maintained separate phone numbers and addresses for each business name, and carefully spaced their fraudulent activities to avoid patterns that might trigger investigations. Most heartbreaking are the victim impact statements that emerge during the prosecution phase. A 90-year-old widow who was convinced to sell her late husband's metal collection for a fraction of its value. Adult children who trusted my parents to help liquidate their deceased mother's antiques, not realizing they were being systematically defrauded. Families who lost irreplaceable heirlooms that had been passed down for generations. The evidence against Derek that my parents had prepared was thorough enough to potentially convince a jury if they had been able to present it before we exposed their real activities. Fake receipts showing Derek purchasing stolen items. Doctored phone records suggesting ongoing business relationships. Even testimony from neighbors who had been coached to remember seeing Derek visiting estate sales with my parents. They would have destroyed your life completely, Detective Rodriguez tells us during one of our final interviews. This level of premeditation in framing an innocent person shows genuine sociopathic behavior. 3 months after their arrest, my parents are offered plea agreements in exchange for providing information about other potential fraud networks in neighboring states. Mom accepts immediately, agreeing to serve 18 months in federal prison plus 5 years of supervised probation. Dad chooses to fight the charges, convinced he can persuade a jury that Derek was the real mastermind. His trial lasts 6 days. The jury deliberates for less than 2 hours before finding him guilty on all counts. He receives 4 years in federal prison plus full restitution to all identified victims. From prison, Mom sends me a letter claiming she forgives me for my betrayal and hopes I'll visit her soon so we can rebuild our relationship. The letter is filled with religious language about forgiveness and family bonds, but contains no acknowledgement of wrongdoing and no genuine apology for the pain she caused. Dad's letter is shorter and more honest. He blames me for destroying our family and promises that he'll never speak to me again after his release. Strangely, I find his anger more respectful than Mom's manipulation. I don't respond to either letter. 2 years have passed since that gray Sunday when my parents' carefully constructed world collapsed around them. Today, Derek and I are hosting our first Thanksgiving dinner in our new house, surrounded by the family we've chosen rather than the one we inherited. Nathan flew in from San Francisco yesterday, bringing his new girlfriend Sarah and stories about his promotion to senior software engineer. James Hartford drove down from Chicago with his wife Patricia, carrying a bottle of wine and the recovered Rolex Submariner that now sits proudly on our mantelpiece. I never thought I'd see this watch again, James says, admiring how the afternoon sunlight catches the gold face. When your parents stole it, I figured it was gone forever. Derek passes around appetizers while I finish preparations in the kitchen. Juliana's grandfather would have loved knowing his watch brought justice to so many families, he says. In a strange way, it served its purpose as a family heirloom even better than he could have imagined. Detective Rodriguez arrives just before dinner with her teenage daughter Emma, who's considering studying graphic design in college. Sarah Rodriguez has become more than our law enforcement contact over the past 2 years. She's become a genuine friend who helped us navigate the complex emotional aftermath of prosecuting family members. Any word from your parents lately? Sarah asks as we settle around the dining table. Mom writes once a month. I reply, carving the turkey that Derek spent all morning preparing. Same manipulative language about forgiveness and family healing. Dad hasn't contacted us since his sentencing, which honestly feels more genuine than Mom's fake reconciliation attempts. Nathan raises his glass of wine. I want to propose a toast. To my sister Juliana, who chose justice over family loyalty. To Derek, who survived being framed by in-laws from hell. And to Sarah, who made sure the real criminals faced consequences for their actions. To chosen family, Derek adds, and to the courage to do what's right, even when it's painful. As we share our Thanksgiving meal, I reflect on how much our lives have changed since that shocking day when a birthday gift revealed my parents' true nature. The emotional journey has been harder than I expected, filled with grief for the parents I thought I had and anger at the manipulative strangers they turned out to be. Therapy helped me understand that my parents' behavior toward Derek wasn't aberrant cruelty. It was the logical extension of control patterns they'd been using on Nathan and me our entire lives. The difference was that Derek represented a threat to their dominance that they couldn't tolerate. Juliana, Have you decided whether you'll attend your father's parole hearing next year? James asks. I'll be there to provide victim impact testimony if the prosecutors need me. I answer, but not to support his early release. Dad hasn't shown any genuine remorse or understanding of how his actions affected people. Until that changes, he remains a danger to vulnerable individuals. The restitution process has been more successful than anyone anticipated. My parents' assets, including their house, cars, and hidden bank accounts, generated enough funds to compensate most victims for their financial losses. While families can't recover irreplaceable sentimental items, knowing that justice was served has provided emotional closure for many. Derek and I used the reward money from James Hartford's insurance company to make a down payment on this house. We've transformed the spare bedroom into my expanded design studio, where I now work with 3 regular clients and a growing freelance business. I have an announcement, Nathan says during dessert. Sarah and I are engaged. We're planning a small ceremony in Napa Valley next spring, and we want Derek to be my best man. The joy around our table is infectious. Nathan found love with someone who appreciates his gentle nature and supports his dreams. Derek gained the brother relationship he never had growing up as an only child. I discovered that family bonds can be stronger when they're chosen freely rather than imposed by genetics. Later, as our guests help with dishes and share stories about their own family challenges, Derek pulls me aside for a private moment. Do you ever regret how everything happened? He asks. Losing your parents, going through the investigation, dealing with all the legal proceedings. I consider his question seriously. I regret that my parents chose crime over honesty. I regret that they hurt so many innocent families. I regret that they were willing to destroy our marriage to maintain control over my life. But I don't regret exposing them or choosing you over their manipulation. Even though it meant losing your family. Derek, I didn't lose my family. I lost 2 people who were using family relationships to justify criminal behavior. Look around this room. Nathan is my family. Sarah Rodriguez is my family. James and Patricia are my family. You are my family. Everyone here chooses to be part of our lives because they care about us, not because they want to control us. As the evening winds down, I think about the life lesson that emerged from our ordeal. Sometimes the most dangerous traps come wrapped in familiar love. Learning to recognize manipulation, even from family, isn't betrayal. It's survival. The people who truly love you want you to be happy, independent, and free to make your own choices. They don't scheme to eliminate your spouse, frame innocent people for crimes, or steal from grieving families to fund their lifestyle. My parents taught me about family loyalty, but they defined loyalty as blind obedience to their wishes regardless of right and wrong. Real family loyalty means supporting each other's growth, protecting each other from harm, and standing together for justice and truth. The watch that started our nightmare has become a symbol of justice served and family bonds that transcend blood relationships. Every time I see it on our mantelpiece, I'm reminded that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust your instincts, stand up to people who claim to love you while treating you badly, and choose the family that chooses you back. Today, as Derek and I prepare for bed in our own home, surrounded by evidence of the life we've built together despite every obstacle my parents created, I feel profound gratitude for that moment of recognition when I saw Grandpa Henry's watch and whispered, "Don't touch it. It's a trap," because recognizing that trap led to freedom. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? How do you distinguish between genuine love and manipulative control in your own relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of trusting your instincts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family manipulation and finding the courage to choose truth over comfortable lies. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the family you choose is often the family that chooses you back.